AITA for not letting my husband control the money in our house. It's been over a year now since I married my husband. We've known each other a lot longer, so he was well aware of the details of my financial situation, like the $18,000 in credit card debt I brought into the marriage. I've been working hard to dig myself out of that, and I've managed to pay nearly all of it off. But I didn't do it by handing control of my finances over to him or anyone. Maybe he doesn't understand why I'm so fiercely protective of my money, even though he knows the backstory. But he definitely knew that I'm not one to just hand over what I've worked hard for, and that's what's causing all this tension now. The truth is, 10 years ago, I was in a situation that almost broke me. Back then, I was with my kid's dad, and he took complete control of my bank account. He didn't just contribute to managing finances, he literally took over everything. My paycheck went into an account I couldn't access, and he would give me an allowance of $50 a week. $50 for everything: gas, groceries, diapers, and anything else our family needed. To say it was impossible is an understatement. I learned how to walk to the grocery store so I could save enough gas to get to work. I stretched every dollar beyond what anyone should have to, and even then, it wasn't enough. I remember this one day, standing in the diaper aisle at the store, trying to make an impossible decision. My oldest needed diapers, and my newborn did too. But I didn't have enough money to buy both. There I was, a grown woman, a mother of two, crying in the middle of a store because I couldn't afford diapers for my babies. That moment was a low point that left a scar. I'll never forget the kindness of the stranger who saw my desperation, and paid for the diapers. Not only that, they handed me extra money, probably guessing that I'd need it, and told me to hide it. I still tear up thinking about it because it was such a small but life-changing kindness. I took that money home, careful to keep it hidden. But when my ex saw the extra supplies, he accused me of stealing. I tried to explain that $50 a week for a family of 4, 2 of whom were in diapers, just wasn't enough. His response: figure it out. Eventually, I worked up the courage to ask for a little more, just $100 a week. I had to beg and negotiate to even get that. But a few months later, I realized I couldn't live like that anymore. I left and promised myself that I'd never let anyone control my money, my life, or my choices like that again. And I've held to that promise. So, fast forward to now. My husband knows the whole history, the details I laid bare before we ever walked down the aisle. Yet here he is, somehow, pushing and prodding for more control over my finances. He's fully aware that I'm already covering all the groceries for our family of 5, which is no small expense. With a growing teenager, a preteen, and everything they need, it adds up fast. On top of that, I'm also paying the phone bill for all of us, our car insurance, my car payment, and what's left of my old credit card debt. And it's not like he's doing everything else on his own. He handles the mortgage, the utilities, and recently he bought a camper, new to us kind of splurge that he financed in his own name. So now he's got that loan to cover along with his vehicle payment. In my eyes, we're sharing the load in a way that works, but somehow, every time we even get close to talking about money, he finds a way to make it about how I should be contributing more. He's often on my case about how I should be contributing an extra $300 a month to our savings, even though we both know that savings is his an account I can't touch. It's not that I'm unwilling to save or contribute, but to hand over $300 just for it to disappear into an account I can't even check, that's a different story. I need that transparency, that feeling of shared access, especially given my past. For me, it's a red flag, one that he either doesn't see or chooses not to see. A few months back, I actually took matters into my own hands. I went to the bank and opened my own account, a separate account, just for me. Every paycheck, I've been tucking away $250 into what I think of as my safe money. It's a little cushion I can lean on if I need it, a safety net that no one can touch but me. It's my security, something to remind myself that I'm in control. And if he's allowed his own separate account, one that I don't have access to, then I think I'm more than justified in having mine. But he doesn't see it that way. For him, all the money should flow into our account, and by our, he means his. I don't even know if I'm technically on his account. I suspect I'm not, and even if I am, I've never had direct access to it. Without that assurance of full access, The idea of pouring my own hard-earned money into an account I can't reach just isn't comfortable. When I told him that I'd consider contributing if he'd add me to the account with full access, he just brushed me off, repeating that I needed to trust him. Trust him. Trust, to me, is a two-way street, and after everything I went through, I'm just not willing to hand over control without absolute guarantees. There's also the matter of my kids. I'm still the one responsible for everything they need, from school supplies to clothes, and I don't get child support from my ex. It's not for lack of trying. He's just never been one to contribute financially, and it's not like I have any legal arrangement enforcing it. So everything they need falls on me. Every expense from replacing worn-out sneakers to ensuring they have winter coats is on my shoulders. But my husband's situation is different. He and his ex split the costs for their daughter down the middle, a clean 50-50ths. So when he sees me managing everything on my own, he often seems frustrated, even a bit resentful that I don't just work it out with my ex like he does with his. But that's simply not an option, and I can't change that. It's the reality of my life, and it is what it is. Almost every payday, without fail, he'll casually bring up whether I have any extra money to put toward utilities, like it's no big deal. And every time, I feel my defenses going up. Sometimes I try to redirect by telling him that if he took over the grocery shopping, I'd have a bit more to spare for utilities. But he doesn't bite. It's like he's just waiting for me to give in and agree to hand over the money. And when I don't, he starts in with criticisms about my spending habits. He'll say that I'm irresponsible or that I don't know how to save, and then he'll launch into this vision of how, if he were in charge of managing our money, we'd be able to save so much more. We could go on vacations whenever we wanted, go out to eat without worrying about the bill, and just enjoy life more. According to him, the only thing standing in the way of that dream is my unwillingness to turn over control. He's even suggested multiple times, in fact, that I should just hand him whatever's left of my paycheck after bills, let him handle everything, and stop worrying. But the thing is, I can't do it. Just the mere thought of putting myself in that position again, of giving someone else control over my money, makes me feel this intense wave of anxiety. I start getting flashbacks to when my ex held the reins to everything I earned, and I had to beg him for every dollar. Even the idea of having an allowance makes my skin crawl. It's a feeling I can't shake, a deep-rooted fear that grips me every time he brings it up. I know I'm not perfect. I do overspend occasionally, who doesn't? But I've worked hard to pull myself out of the financial mess I was in. I'm not drowning in credit card debt anymore, and I'm no longer scraping by, paycheck to paycheck, like I was back in 2020. I make a point to budget carefully. I clip coupons, make shopping lists, and I have a general idea of my grocery bill before I even step foot in the store. I've taken on the responsibility of making sure our family is well fed without overextending myself. But to him, it's like all my efforts don't count because I'm not willing to pool every cent with his. Recently, he sold one of his vehicles and added $16,000 to his savings account. Afterward, he handed me $1,000, saying it was mine to do whatever with. I was honestly grateful. $1,000 is a nice amount to have as a little extra cushion, so I did what I thought was responsible. I put $200 of it aside for later, a little nest egg to hold onto for emergencies or any unexpected expenses. I then picked out a Christmas gift for each of my kids, wanting to get a jump on the holiday season while things were on sale. After that, I ordered new glasses and contacts, something I've needed for a while but had been putting off because of the cost. But then I spotted a $20 hoodie I liked and mentioned it to him, and suddenly, it was like I'd committed some huge offense. He looked at me and said, "Did you already spend that $1,000? See, this is why I shouldn't give you money." I couldn't believe it. He knew exactly where the money had gone. I'd told him I was getting the kids gifts and taking care of my vision needs. And yet, he demanded to see receipts, questioning every purchase as if I'd gone on some wild spending spree. I showed him exactly what I'd spent the money on, but instead of understanding, he turned it around on me, calling me irresponsible and saying that he should have known better than to trust me with it in the first place. It doesn't help that his friends have started making these subtle, needling comments every time we go out. They'll say things like, "Why don't you pay when we're out?" or "Time to pull out that debit card." It's embarrassing. like they're all in on this unspoken agreement that I'm supposed to contribute more, or maybe even that I'm not doing my part as his wife. But the thing is, I do pitch in. I always make sure to leave the tip, and I'm grateful for the bartenders and waitstaff who are always attentive and keep my water glass filled. I rarely drink, usually opting for water, and occasionally, I'll have a single drink as a treat, but I'm careful not to overdo it. DUI laws terrify me, and I have too much at stake to risk that. Yet despite everything I do to contribute, it feels like I'm failing some invisible test because I don't whip out my card at every opportunity. It's like he and his friends are all watching me, waiting for me to slip up so they can confirm their narrative that I'm somehow irresponsible with money. But the truth is, I've worked hard to build up a savings cushion nearly $10,000 at this point, and I'm proud of it. Every dollar in that account is hard-earned, and I've made sacrifices to save it. But somehow, he's managed to make me feel like I'm being selfish or unreasonable for wanting to hold on to it. It's as though, in his mind, my success and discipline with money don't mean anything if I'm not willing to surrender control to him. And so here I am, caught in this impossible situation. On one hand, there's my commitment to my husband and my desire to make our marriage work. On the other, there's this promise I made to myself 10 years ago, a promise that I would never let myself be financially controlled by anyone again. I know I'm holding on tightly, maybe too tightly at times, but when holding on is what saved me in the first place, how can I let go without fearing that I'm about to step right back into the trap I spent years clawing my way out of? I don't think I'm wrong for wanting control over my finances, but it's hard to shake the feeling that maybe I'm being too stubborn, too unyielding. Update 1. When I think about how I got to this point, I realize it's been a long, winding road, and it hasn't been easy. The debt I had when we first moved in together wasn't just from one source. It was from the aftermath of a lot of tough decisions and circumstances beyond my control. My ex-boyfriend, who lived with me during those rough times, was supposed to be a partner, but he quickly became a financial burden. He didn't want to contribute to anything, even as bills piled up and I was scrambling to make ends meet. It was just me trying to cover everything while he coasted along, indifferent. I had to rob Peter to pay Paul, maxing out cards just to keep us afloat, and when the pandemic and constantly looking for whatever work I could find, I was stretched to my absolute limit. It felt like I was trapped in a cycle, just desperately trying to keep us from sinking further, all while carrying the full load alone. When I finally reeled that debt in, it was a huge relief, but the scars from those years linger. The credit card balances, the endless juggling of payments, the nights lying awake, wondering how I'd pay everything, those memories have stayed with me. And they're a big reason I've been so protective of my finances since. I had to dig myself out of that hole with no help from anyone, and that experience taught me just how important it is to keep control of my money. But now, as my husband pushes harder and harder for that control, I'm realizing that maybe he doesn't fully understand just how much it took for me to get here. It's not like our incomes are drastically different. Right now, we're pretty close financially. His base salary and mine only differ by about $6,000 a year without overtime factored in, which is manageable, but we're about to hit a turning point. I've been working toward a promotion, and if everything goes as planned, my monthly income will be 1.5 times what he makes. I'm putting in the work now, training, meeting with mentors, and putting in extra hours to make sure I'm ready. If I can secure this promotion, my financial situation will improve dramatically. This wouldn't just be a bump in my paycheck, it would be a massive increase in our household's overall financial health. I'm talking about potentially earning up to $20,000 more than his base pay when you factor in overtime. This promotion could be the game changer I've been working toward, but it's still a delicate situation because I know my success may not be met with the support I would hope for. Our financial responsibilities are vastly different, and that's a big part of why I haven't felt the need to contribute to household bills beyond what I'm already covering. When we break down the expenses, his monthly bills are manageable. He's responsible for around $700 a month, with $400 of that going toward the house payment, and the remaining $300 covering gas, water, and electricity. On the surface, it seems fair enough, but when you dig a bit deeper, it becomes clear that I'm handling a much heavier load. My own monthly expenses are significant. Just my car insurance alone has been unpredictable. Last month, It shot up to $337 because of the new vehicle he purchased, though it's expected to be around $250 going forward. The phone and internet bill is another big one, totaling just over $264. That includes internet, which we all use, and it's non-negotiable given the importance of connectivity for work, school, and everything else. And then there's the grocery bill, which can range anywhere from $200 to $400 per week. That might sound high, but when you consider the rising cost of produce, meat, and other essentials, it makes sense. I'm shopping smart, finding deals, and budgeting carefully, but feeding a family of 5 is no small task, especially when 2 of them are teenagers with bottomless appetites. Groceries are a massive part of my budget, but it's something I take on without hesitation because it's a necessity. I don't even ask him to chip in for groceries because I see it as my contribution to the household, but that's a big reason why I haven't felt obligated to pitch in for additional household bills. On top of that, I cover all the streaming services: Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, and more. I know streaming costs can seem trivial, but with everything added up, they do become significant. These subscriptions are for the whole family, and it's just one more expense I've chosen to take on so that my husband can focus on the other household bills. Between groceries, the phone and internet bill, car insurance, and streaming services, my contribution is anything but insignificant. And despite all this, he keeps pushing. It's like he's constantly calculating, finding ways to suggest that I could help more, even though, in reality, I'm already carrying a significant share of the load. It's frustrating because he's seen firsthand how hard I've worked to get to this point. I've clawed my way out of debt, built up a savings cushion, and kept us afloat through tough times. Yet, every time he brings up our finances, it feels like he's questioning my dedication, my ability, or even my integrity. It's a subtle, constant pressure, a persistent insistence that we should be doing things his way, that I should let go, hand over control, and just trust him to manage everything. It's exhausting, feeling like I'm constantly on trial for the way I handle my finances, as though my history, my journey, and my hard-won independence don't matter. The irony is that he trusts me with managing huge parts of our household, feeding our family, covering the utilities that keep us connected, ensuring we have access to transportation, yet when it comes to the money I've worked so hard to earn and save, he thinks I need his oversight. I keep wondering if he truly doesn't understand, or if he's choosing not to. Either way, it's disheartening, and I can't shake the feeling that maybe my success, my financial independence, is somehow threatening to him. And with my potential promotion on the horizon, I worry that things could become even more strained. Once my income surpasses his, will he respect that I've earned it? Or will it just amplify his insistence that he should be the one handling our finances? For now, I'm standing my ground, determined to hold on to the stability I fought so hard for. I know my worth, and I know the value of every dollar I bring in. I've been through too much to just hand over my hard-earned security because someone else thinks they know better. So maybe I'm being stubborn, maybe even overprotective. But I promised myself that I'd never let anyone else control my finances again, and that's a promise I intend to keep. Update 2. The breaking point came sooner than I expected. For weeks, maybe even months, there had been a slow, simmering tension between us, a low hum of frustration just under the surface. Every time I thought we'd reached some kind of understanding, he'd make another comment, another dig, about how we should be handling things together, though his version of together meant him in control, me following along. It was a pressure that was becoming suffocating. I knew I had to confront him because, frankly, I was done. I was sick of feeling like I had to defend myself over every decision I made, every dollar I spent. I was tired of justifying why I wanted control over the money I worked so hard to earn. The reality was simple: either he gave me the freedom to manage my finances independently, or we were over. I was not about to go through the same nightmare I'd experienced with my ex. And so I told him, plainly and firmly, what I needed. The conversation was as tense as I'd imagined it would be. I laid it all out, explaining that I had no intention of letting anyone else control my money, not after everything I'd been through. I told him that, as a grown woman who had pulled herself up from rock bottom, I deserved the freedom to make my own financial choices without interference. I reminded him that I had built myself back up, found stability, paid down debt, and created a future that felt secure. It wasn't up for negotiation. I made it clear that he could either accept it and respect my independence, or we would go our separate ways. I wasn't going to lose myself again just to make him feel comfortable. But as I spoke, I could see his expression harden. The look in his eyes was one of wounded pride, disbelief, and, to my dismay, anger. It was as if he couldn't believe I was challenging him, questioning his authority over something he felt he should control. The more I explained my stance, the more defensive he became. He started talking about how I was the one being unreasonable, how I didn't know how to manage money properly, how I was overspending, being reckless. He brought up every perceived flaw in my budgeting and spending habits, twisting things as if to prove his point. His words were cutting, and though I'd prepared myself for this reaction, it still stung to hear him reduce my hard work and independence to irresponsibility. In his mind, his way was the only way. He dismissed my experiences, my autonomy, and insisted that if I just trusted him, everything would be better. And as he spoke, all I could think was how eerily similar this was to my past. I'd been here before, heard these same arguments, faced this same refusal to see my perspective. It was like listening to my ex all over again, and in that moment, it became crystal clear. I couldn't stay. He refused to acknowledge that I was capable, that I'd been managing just fine, despite the constant pushback. He wouldn't budge on his view that he should control the finances, just as he refused to consider that maybe, just maybe, I was right to want my own security. His refusal to respect my boundaries wasn't just a red flag, it was the final straw. I wasn't about to compromise my future, my peace of mind, just to make him feel in charge. I'd been down that road, and I wasn't going to make the same mistake twice. When he said he wouldn't give me full control over my finances, it was a deal breaker. I knew right then and there that I needed to leave. There was no room for negotiation. I'd reached the end of my patience, my willingness to keep bending, compromising, and hoping he'd understand. He made his choice, and now I had to make mine. The days that followed were a blur of packing, making plans, and ensuring that I had everything in order before I left. I didn't make a big announcement, didn't drag it out. I had no intention of trying to convince him any further. If he couldn't respect my autonomy, then there was no partnership to save. I let him know I was leaving, and that was that. Leaving felt surreal at first, like I was floating between disbelief and relief. I had spent so long trying to make things work, trying to navigate his criticisms and his insistence on control. But as I closed the door on that chapter of my life, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was as if I could finally breathe freely again, without the constant pressure to prove my worth, my responsibility, my independence. I was free to manage my own finances, my own life, without anyone looking over my shoulder, questioning my every decision.